Attack on Titan Season 4 is divisive. From the animation to the subject matter, the show is causing controversy and forcing people to talk about it. It makes us question everything we knew for the first 3 seasons of the show. The allegiance of our characters, who we should be rooting for, and what's the right thing to do. The world is divided on what needs to be done, both in the show and in real life. But I want to slow down for a sec, because we can't understand how far we've come until we understand what we've lost. And what we've lost is more than we bargained for. Personally, I was devastated by Sasha's death. When I first experienced this section in the manga, I kept asking myself, why Sasha? I understood that, narratively speaking, someone from Paradise had to die after the raid on Marley. It was the first time our characters, who had been acting out of self-preservation up to this point, decided to bring the horrors of war that they experienced on the island to where their enemies live. We all knew that there would be consequences to the actions Eren and the scouts took in Liberia. But I couldn't understand why, of all people, Sasha was the one chosen to die. Why not John, or Connie, or Flock for God's sake? But Isayama decided to go with Sasha for some reason that I personally couldn't understand. After re-experiencing this moment in the anime, and seeing the massive outcry from the fanbase, I finally understood why it had to be Sasha who died here. But in order to understand that, we first need to consider Sasha's role in Attack on Titan. Sasha Browse was one of the first characters we were introduced to in Season 1, and arguably has the most memorable introduction of any of the members of the 104th Cadet Corps. Unlike everyone else there, she isn't introduced getting chewed out for being too soft, or being overlooked due to how much of a hard-ass she is. Instead, she is introduced eating a potato. If that wasn't enough, when Drill Sergeant Shadis confronts her about this, she doesn't pretend to hide what she did. She simply assumes he's as hungry as she is, and offers to share it. This dumbfounds even the most hardcore cadets in the Corps, and from then on, Sasha becomes known as the Potato Girl. But for the audience, this is the first moment of levity we've had since the series started. Up until this point, the show had been nothing but bleakness, in the wake of Walmaria being breached and Eren's mother being devoured by a Titan. This moment marks a shift in the tone of the show, and for the next few episodes, Attack on Titan goes from a gritty, tragic tale of war and loss to an almost slice-of-life story about these cadets of various personalities and backgrounds growing closer together through their training. This silly moment doesn't only give the audience a reason to laugh, it serves as a relief of tension for the characters as well. If Eren represents humanity's will for the future, to get back what they lost, then Sasha represents humanity's ability to live in the present. Much like a child, she can't see past her base needs and desires. She exists in the here and now. You can argue that someone like that wouldn't be an effective soldier, but this is where Sasha excels. Her present-mindedness and ability to exist in the moment is what makes her one of the top cadets in her class. Sasha is more than just a comedy character. She's the only character in the show you can expect to consistently bring levity to any situation. Whenever there is a moment of reprieve, Sasha is right at the center of things. Unlike everyone else, who is focused on revenge or getting ahead in life, she was only ever focused on one thing: her next meal. But that's not all there is to Sasha's character. It's not simply a goofy character gimmick. There's a reason for why she acts this way. The second episode of Season 2 is titled I'm Home, and is entirely focused on Sasha. We learn that the reason she is always hungry is because she and her family were hunters and farmers living off of the land behind Wall Rose, until the government seized their land in order to house and feed the refugees from Wall Maria. Sasha resents the refugees for causing them to be pushed out of their home, displacing their family and forcing them to abandon their way of life. She isn't able to live as comfortably as she used to, and blames the refugees for the fact that she's always hungry. But Sasha's father imparts some wisdom onto her, reminding her that being able to adapt is necessary for survival.
我々は世界に生かしてもらっとるからな。人間ちゅうのは群れで生きる動物なんじゃ。違う生き方をしている人間で限られた環境の中じゃ同じ群れに入って人と関わっていかんけりゃ。いやって。私たちはご先祖様に生き方を教えてもらって生きてきたんやから。よそ者に受けた恩なんかないよ。一生この森の中で自分や同族のみの価値観で生きていくんも。けどなあサシャ、それと心中する覚悟はあるんか。これからどんな危機に見舞われてん助けを請うてはならんとぞ。義務を果たさんもんがその恩恵を受けることができんのは当然やからな。伝統を捨ててでも一族と共に生きたいと思っておる。世界がつながってることも受け入れなければならん。
As Armin said before,
何も捨てることができない人には何も変えることはできないだろう。
It's clear based on Sasha's one-track mind that this message hasn't fully sunk in for her at this point in the story. She has been able to become a soldier, but she still isn't able to reconcile her old way of life with her new one. It isn't until she has to put that training to use that she is finally able to fully adapt, as her father said she needed to. Using the skills she learned from hunting in the wilderness and the knowledge and strength she gained from her training as a soldier, she is able to rescue a little girl from a titan. This moment always stood out to me, as it's an episode dedicated exclusively to Sasha's development. We see her grow from someone who resents the way that everything is changing around her, and that her and her family are losing their way of life, to someone who actively embraces change, without feeling the need to change who she is. It's rare that we get an episode like this in Attack on Titan, a one-off episode focusing on a single character, who they are, and the growth they undergo in a life or death situation. Sasha finally learns to put the needs of others before herself. Where before she wasn't able to empathize with the immigrants from Wall Maria, who lost their homes to the Titans, she is now seeing the same thing happen to her own home right before her very eyes. But she retains her hope and generosity, two traits of hers that are so infectious that she inadvertently passes them on to the little girl that she saves. What's great about this is that despite being a serious episode, it's still positive. It ends on a hopeful and optimistic note. I'm Home always stood out to me as a dim light in a show filled with darkness, just as Sasha's character shines brightly in the world of Attack on Titan. This is Sasha's strength, her defining attribute as a character in this world. The episode serves as a lovely little vignette in a series that is normally oppressively bleak. But more than that, it shows what Sasha brings to the story. Positivity, whimsy, laughter, happiness, innocence, and hope. Hope for a future where everyone can be as present-minded and carefree as she is. She might not be the character with the most depth, but she is someone who represents the simplicity of childhood, someone who lives in the moment, but is learning to put her own needs aside for those who need help more than she does. But all of this changes when we reach Season 4. The Scouts are no longer the innocent characters who once fought to take back the world that was taken from them 8 years ago. They crossed the sea, they murdered countless unsuspecting people, even civilians and children. They have blood on their hands, and not just the blood from a war fought in self-defense. They are no longer just victims of violence and hate, fighting back against oppression for the betterment of what's left of humanity. They are perpetrators, committing the same crimes that were once committed against them, the same crimes that led them to join the Scouts and fight back against their attackers in the first place. The same goes for Sasha. Just like the others, she once viewed the world in black and white. The Titans were the oppressors, making their lives inside the walls hell. But as they continued to fight for freedom and take back what they lost, they went from fighting Titans to fighting humans wrapped in Titan bodies, to just fighting humans. But all the while, we kept rooting for them, because we were just as in the dark as they were. We had no reason to believe that our main characters were doing anything wrong. They were just responding to the people attacking them. Even up to the end of Season 3, there was no reason to view them as anything other than heroes, fighting for the freedom of humanity inside the walls against a genocide being committed on their people. But in the final season, now that they know the whole truth and have crossed the sea to bring the war to their enemies home, they are no longer the innocent victims responding to an attack on their home and way of life. They have become the monsters they once swore to defeat by bringing the terror they once faced to the homes of people who didn't do anything to deserve it. Whether you feel they were justified in this course of action, or you believe that they had no other choice, it doesn't change the fact that what they have done is irredeemable, and makes them just as culpable as the monsters who attacked the walls in Episode 1. If Reiner had a choice, then so does Eren now. And just like Eren responded to the attack on Wall Maria by swearing revenge against all Titans, Gabby has sworn revenge against the Devils of Parody. To her, she's not fighting humans, she's fighting monsters who want to destroy the world. And by attacking Marley and murdering the Eldians of the internment zone, Eren and the Scouts have given legitimacy to the world's worst fears and biases against them. Although Eren and Zeke appear to have orchestrated the attack, the Scouts made the choice to participate in the assault on Liberia. Although it's clear that this wasn't their preferred course of action, they now have innocent blood on their hands too. The blood of people who aren't just faceless, nameless Titans, but the blood of people with families and friends who will mourn their passing, just like our favorite characters mourned Marco or Eren mourned his mother. Sasha isn't innocent either, sniping down soldiers who are just trying to get civilians to safety in a cold and calculated manner. The girl who once reacted comedically strongly to every little thing is gone, hardened by years of war and terror. All of our characters have become remarkably comfortable with the amount of violence they have had to commit. But after all they've been through, is it really surprising? It begs the question, can we still laugh alongside these characters after seeing the terror that they've personally inflicted upon the world? Is there still room for joy and levity in a story that depicts war crimes as something that might be necessary for survival? At very least, Isayama doesn't seem to think so. Sasha's death marks a change to Attack on Titan. Losing her signifies the loss of the uplifting and inspiring elements that we had come to expect from the show. Our characters have gone a step too far, and it comes at the cost of our ability to laugh alongside them. There is no longer room for humor given the magnitude of what they have done. This is the end of something. It's the end of us being able to believe our heroes have humanity's best interest at heart. They've crossed a threshold, and there's no going back. Any levity that was left in Attack on Titan is gone, along with any hope of a positive outcome. At this point, there's no choice but to